Let's talk about these new job numbers. Good news is what we expected, or was this kind of a surprise, Mark?
We celebrate the fact that the unemployment rate went below the 10% level. The expectation was it would probably go to like 9.9 or 9.8%. What we got was all the way down to 8.4%. Now, a year ago, you would have said, what the heck happened that we're at such an elevated level of unemployment? We know so many things have happened since then. The number of jobs that are being added is slowly waning. And we basically, to put it simply, have clawed back about half of the jobs that we lost from the 22 million earlier this year. So a number of key sectors on the leading edge of job loss are seeing jobs recovered, but they still have a way to go. Look at, for example, in the leisure and hospitality space, that is bars and restaurants. They added 174,000 jobs, but they are still dealing with a deficit of 2.5 million all across the country. And we know the deeper we get into this, and we're not out of it for some time to come, there are still going to be many organizations, businesses, whether they're large or small, that will essentially have to throw in the towel because they cannot operate at that 30 to 50 to 75% level, whatever it might be, where they're located, because that's a precarious business to be involved with during the best of times, and these are not the best of times.
Yeah, I know. Last time we talked about permanent job loss. Some of these gains, though, I think, as you just hinted at, is just a return to some of the jobs, I guess, that from people who had been laid off, right?
Right. Yeah, I prefer to think of this as job recovery than jobs being created, because essentially what's happening in many cases is people are simply coming back to the jobs they had before. So think about the fact that in the first 2 months of the downturn, we lost 22 million jobs, and we now have to make up another 11.5 million nationally just to get back to where we were before. Hey, we're making progress, but there's still a long way to go in this journey.
So in terms of Florida, and we've talked about this, restaurants, hospitality are a key part, if not the majority of the economy down here. Is there any reason to be encouraged by that heading into the last quarter of the year, which is traditionally the start of a tourist season here?
I think Florida is and should be looking forward to the fact that essentially autumn has begun around those of us who are well north of the Sunshine State. It's not officially underway, but I can tell you the leaves are falling. And that means that people are going to be gravitating toward warmer weather in the months to come. Obviously, it's going to be a challenge because you're going to have COVID-19 still present. And while what we're hearing is good news on the treatment front, and we pray that vaccines, both safe and effective, will be available sooner rather than later, that's the news we're still waiting for. Nevertheless, if you're getting people who are going to, for example, homes or condos or staying safely in hotels, I think that that's business which will return to some degree. They will not be flying on airplanes to the degree that they were before. And business travel is really the wild card. That's the one that is going to be really slow to come back.
Yeah, the whole landscape of that is entirely different coming out of this, right? And I know there's some office buildings being built down here, but when you drive by it, I even think, who's going to occupy these buildings, because people are going to be working remotely, and that's kind of the new reality now.
I think there's a balance that employers and organizations are going to be working through about deciding to allow employees to work from home, work remotely as they can, but also to encourage the engagement of teams and team members. Working from home, working remotely is not as ideal for organizations broadly as it is for people to interact on a personal basis. But there are cost savings from being able to limit the expenditures on commercial real estate. Indeed, the challenges facing commercial real estate are quite significant. Many major banks have heavy exposure to this, and this is going to be one of the longer run stories we're going to be watching. On the other side of the equation, the housing market's doing very well, relatively speaking, and that's enabled by low mortgage interest rates, record low mortgage interest rates, as well as the fact that people are changing the idea to some degree about the spaces they want to live in. They want to add a home office. They don't want to be necessarily in densely populated areas like they were before. Some of that is short-term thinking because the worst of the pandemic will go away. The vaccines will become available, and we won't be quite as concerned about taking an elevator with 6 to 10 people in it, I don't think.
Yeah, well, I mean, the timing of this on Labor Day weekend is certainly good news, but as I think, as you mentioned, there's a great deal of people who are still not working, and then even as we try to put a shine on these numbers, we still have a long way to go to kind of get us back to a comfortable place here, right?
Labor Department tells us there are 16.6 million unemployed persons in the country, and that number doesn't even include those who have essentially exited the workforce, so to speak. The workforce is defined as those who are working or looking for work. And right now, there are some people who are basically putting that on pause, in part because they have children that are going to school and somebody needs to stay at home, don't want a Home Alone 2 sequel being generated from that. So the workforce is facing some challenges, and that'll continue to be one of the things that is very consistent with this COVID-19 downturn.
All right, Mark, I appreciate your time. Always a pleasure talking with you and getting your perspective and spin on these things to help us understand it better. But have a
My
great
pleasure.
3-day weekend.
You too. Thank you. You take care.
All right, very good.